Hello, boys. Hello, girls. Hello, babes. Welcome back to the Jenaya Talks Caps podcast, and welcome back to another brand new season of Washington Capitals hockey. We are so excited to get going here for this 2024-2025 NHL season. We will, of course, be covering our Washington Capitals all the way from start to finish, from game 1 until game 82, and hopefully for some Stanley Cup playoff games after that as well. And so while I have your attention here, just really quickly, I would like to ask you all that if you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, that you please go ahead and do that. If you are enjoying your time here, we really appreciate it. We love having you all along here with us for this ride every season. And we of course don't want you to miss any episodes, as we will have tons of great content coming out for you all season long. So take a second here right now, click on that subscribe button if you haven't already, and let's get going here, babes. So excited for this season to get underway. Like I just said, 2024-2025, your Washington Capitals, of course, have made a ton of off-season moves, off-season improvements to the team, which we covered extensively in our previous episode. In case you missed that one, you can find it on our feed as well. We do go pretty in-depth with all of the moves that the Capitals made over the off-season. So, but now, right, like the time has finally come to see all of those new additions take the ice for this team officially, right? As the Capitals' regular season is set to get underway now this upcoming Saturday, October 12th, against the New Jersey Devils at Capital One Arena. But I can tell you one thing, even though the preseason games aren't official games, all of these guys, all of these new additions to the team certainly looked great. They really did throughout the preseason. Logan Thompson in net, he played 2 preseason games and he looked very impressive in both of those games. Jacob Chychrun and Matt Roy on the back end. Who baby? And Pierre-Luc Dubois, Andrew Mangiapane, Brandon Duhaime, and Taylor Radish up front. We will get into the whole lineup here for this episode, but certainly all of the new guys looked great. They really did. So that is obviously very promising as we head into this season here. There are a ton of reasons, obviously, to be very optimistic here. So let's go over the opening night roster and break it down here. Up front, in case you missed it, the Caps ultimately did decide to send 20-year-old Ivan Miroshnichenko to Hershey and to send 19-year-old Andrew Crystal back to juniors. And now the reason why that has been somewhat surprising to so many people is because both of those young guys had such strong training camps, such strong preseason performances, that a lot of people understandably thought that they were going to be on this team come opening night. And I can definitely understand why people thought that. But for the record, I was not one of those people, as I actually thought that the Caps were going to do exactly what they have ended up doing here, which is sending both guys back down for the time being. I do think it's the right decision being made here by the Washington Capitals, and I'll explain why. First and foremost for me is the Caps are thinking long-term here, which is exactly what they should be doing at this point. They're thinking about the proper and correct development path for 2 players, age 19 and 20, like I said, who certainly look like they are going to be future NHL stars. So thinking long-term in a situation like this with players like this, that's certainly the right move to me. That's what you would want your organization to do. You want them thinking long-term about developing these players properly, right? And given that it was essentially only a third-line spot, which was up for grabs on this season's opening night roster of the Caps, you don't want to, like I said, fudge the development of these 2 young players by sticking them in a third-line role, right? Like playing only third-line minutes, not getting much special teams time. You really don't want to do that, right? No matter how exciting the prospect of having them on the team this season may be for us fans, right? And it is hard to let them go, to let them, be sent back down, because of course we all want to see them as soon as possible playing for the Washington Capitals. But yeah, I mean, like it was essentially down to a competition between three players, right? So Miroshnichenko, Crystal, and Jacob Vrana for that one last forward spot. And by the way, I'm only saying quote unquote third line because Spencer Carberry has indicated that Sonny Milano's preseason hasn't really been up to snuff. And so that is the player on the wing on the third line that Carberry has been rotating in and out of the lineup, during practices and during preseason. But at the same time, Carberry also said that Sonny Milano also does get a bit of the benefit of the doubt, as he probably should, because, he can be considered a veteran player now at this point. This is Carberry speaking, not me, although I do agree with him. But yeah, Carberry said, Sonny Milano, he does get a bit of the benefit of the doubt because he can be considered a veteran player now at this point. He's got multiple NHL seasons under his belt now where he has been productive. And Carberry's first season as coach of the Capitals last season, Sonny Milano scored 15 goals in only 49 games, which is a 25-goal pace. So Spencer Carberry knows that Sonny Milano can be a productive player for this team and in this system. And so it very well might end up that, Milano is lining up at third line left wing on opening night anyway. This competition, between Vrana, Miroshnichenko, and Crystal may have all just been for the 13th forward spot anyway. But yeah, I mean, for the time being anyway, that was basically the only spot that was being looked at really within the lineup, was third line left wing, on account, like I said, of Sonny Milano's little bit lackluster preseason. But it is preseason, right? We don't judge too much just based on preseason. We wait to see what he does once the real games actually get going here. So, however, talking about the competition between Vrana, Miroshnichenko, and Crystal, and like I said, how it may have all just been for the 13th forward spot, that only makes my point for me even more, right? You certainly would not want a 20-year-old Miroshnichenko or a 19-year-old Crystal sitting out games at this stage of their development as a healthy scratch for the big club. That would be mind-numbingly stupid. So, they send them back down, Miroshnichenko to Hershey and Crystal back to the Kelowna Rockets of the WHL to play top-line minutes for those clubs, right? To be among the go-to guys, play on first unit special teams, etc., etc., etc. That's ultimately going to be much, much better for their development as long-term National Hockey League players for this club, which, like I said, makes it quite obviously the right move in the eyes of many, myself included. And I mean, look, we have seen the proof in the pudding time and time again around the National Hockey League that letting these young, budding NHL stars cook for that extra year in the AHL is the way to go. And for the Washington Capitals specifically, they certainly have no worries there, as the Hershey Bears program is, indisputably the very best in the league. So I agree, like I said, with what they've done here with sending Miroshnichenko and Crystal back down for the time being. And plus, consider that Miroshnichenko and Crystal are so young still that neither of them requires waivers as well, right? So that factors in here too. For sure it does, especially when Jacob Vrana also had a very strong camp and a very strong preseason. I mean, it's not as if they're sending Miroshnichenko and Crystal down in order to keep some bum on the team, right? Vrana has looked awesome throughout training camp. So I'm pretty certain that the Caps, Carberry, their whole coaching staff, they must have confidence that Vrana is going to add to this team in a positive way. Certainly when it comes to scoring chance generation on the offensive side, that was one thing that was very, very evident throughout training camp and the preseason games, is that Jake the Snake is still one of the very best at generating scoring chances for himself and his line mates. So sending Miroshnichenko and Crystal down, that gave the Caps the available roster spot to be able to sign Jacob Vrana. And sign him they did. If you missed this, Jake the Snake, he agrees to a league minimum salary contract. And so he will cost the Caps just $775,000 this season. Amazing. So let's look at the projected forward lines here for the Caps. Line number 1, we have got Alex Ovechkin on the left wing with Dylan Strome as his center. That is obviously a duo that had a lot of success together last season. And then their new right winger is Andrew Mangiapane, a get the puck out of the corners and get it to the front of the net type of player that should fit in very nicely next to Ovechkin and Strome. And then line 2, we have got Connor McMichael on the left wing. New acquisition, Pierre-Luc Dubois centering this line with Big Tom Wilson on the right wing. And ooh, baby, that is a heavy, heavy line already with Dubois and Wilson. 2 huge men, obviously. And if we ever see Spencer Carberry put Alex Ovechkin on the left wing of that line instead of McMichael, which I think is definitely a very distinct possibility that we see that at some point this season, then that line will only get even heavier, right? But that line, regardless of who they choose for the left side of it, should be very, very hard to handle for opposition defenses because of its size and sheer strength, among other things. And all 3 of those guys are also excellent skaters, by the way. So there's tons of speed on that line as well between Dubois, Wilson, McMichael. All 3 of those guys can flat out fly out there on the ice. So this has the potential to be a very, very good line for the Washington Capitals. And then on line number 3, this, like I said, is the only one that we are still a little unsure of at the moment, just in terms of exactly what it's going to look like on opening night. As head coach Spencer Carberry, he does have a couple of different options on the left side of this line, like I said. But what we know for sure right now is that reigning AHL playoff MVP Hendrix Lapierre, he will be centering this line. And he will have Alexei Protas on his right wing. But yeah, as I alluded to, there are a couple of different options for the left wing, as that battle right now is between Sonny Milano and Jacob Vrana. And if I had to guess, just based on Carberry's comments to the media this week, I would guess that he is leaning towards giving Sonny Milano the first shot at that third line left wing spot, at least to open the regular season. With Carberry saying this week that Milano has earned himself a lot of credibility with the organization, with the coaching staff, and certainly with his teammates as well, just by the fact that when it's come time to produce an important goal, he has always seemed to do that during Carberry's tenure here. Remember, 15 goals in only 49 games played for Sonny last season. So that is a very productive scoring rate, and not many minutes played as well. Like, he's on the third line. It's not like he gets a ton of ice time. He had one of the highest goals for per 60 rates on the Capitals last season. Actually, one of the highest goals for per 60 rates in the entire National Hockey League last season. So, very productive scorer. And, several of his goals were very big goals for the Caps last season as well, helping them get into the Stanley Cup playoffs. So, I can certainly see why that would probably earn you the first look at that third line left wing spot from this coaching staff, right? And probably, like I said, rightfully so. As Carberry said, they have a certain level of trust and comfort with Sonny that when the games start to count for real here, when it's not preseason anymore, that he will up his game and be ready to go and ready to score goals, no matter what his preseason looked like. So I do think, like I said, that they are going to give him the first shot at it, but we will see. Jacob Vrana, as mentioned, looked really, really good during the preseason. But anyways, regardless of who is ultimately lining up at that third line left wing spot on opening night, that is going to be one very fast third line regardless. Hendrix Lapierre down the middle, super, super fast, right? Alexei Protas, the big man can fly, and no matter who it is on the left, like I said, whether it's Jake the Snake or Sonny Milano, both of those guys are super, super fast as well. I mean, Vrana obviously is quite literally one of the quickest players in the entire National Hockey League, but Sonny Milano is not any type of slouch either, right? Like, he can flat out fly too. So no matter who it is at third line left wing, that line is going to be like watching a bunch of Formula One skaters flying around out there. And I, for one, cannot wait. And then line 4, we know exactly what line 4 is going to be, both in terms of who's going to be on the line and in terms of what that line is going to do out there on the ice every single night, which is to make life utterly miserable for the opposition. Nick Dowd, the best fourth line center in the entire National Hockey League. He will be down the middle once again for the Washington Capitals in his 7th season with the team. And he will be centering new additions, Brandon Duhaime at left wing and Taylor Radish at right wing, on a line that has potential certainly to be very potent offensively for the Caps, as well as being stout defensively. Taylor Radish, he scored 20 goals in a season in this league before. So, like, we already know that Nick Dowd brings a lot of offensive punch for a fourth line center. Taylor Radish is that guy as well. Like, he can put the puck in the net. And if the preseason games were any indication, the chemistry between these guys and Brandon Duhaime, on the left wing, could produce a lot of goals for the Caps this season. We know that they're going to play extremely hard every single shift. We know that. We know that they are going to be great defensively. We know that they're going to have a fuck you attitude out there, hit everything that moves, hammer you through the glass on the forecheck, and just generally make your life miserable. If you're an opposition player, that is, not for Caps fans. For Caps fans, they make us very happy. But yeah, for the opposition, they make their lives absolutely miserable. They really do. But I do think that the offensive punch of this line is something that has the potential to surprise a lot of people this season. So we will wait and see on that, obviously. But I'm just saying, like, just remember that I said this when we're, 20, 40, 60 games into this thing. Just remember that I said it. All right, let us get to the defensive pairings. There's a lot to get to today, so I'm kind of flying through it here. But yeah, the defensive pairings, so pretty much all throughout training camp, we have seen Spencer Carberry using the following pairings. New addition, Jacob Chychrun on the left side of John Carlson. That pairing is just going to have the puck for entire games at a time and never leave the offensive zone. It is going to be so much fun. Martin Ferravari has been lining up next to new addition Matt Roy in a pairing that I think we can all agree has major Dmitry Orlov, Matt Niskanen vibes, right? Which would obviously be a great development for the 2024-2025 Washington Capitals and beyond, with Roy having signed a 6-year deal with the Caps, and obviously we know that Marty Ferravari is going to be wearing a Capitals jersey for a long time. And then Rasmus Sandin, I don't know if I'm the first one to say that, by the way, but remember that I said that as well, okay? Martin Ferravari, Matt Roy, they're the new Dmitry Orlov, Matt Niskanen. Remember that I said it. And then Rasmus Sandin has been skating on a pairing with Trevor Van Riemsdyk. And that was a pairing that had a lot of success together last season. And then the two extras that the Caps have on defense on the NHL roster are left-hander Alex Alexeyev and right-hander Dylan McElrath. So a nice mix there of being covered on either side if someone from either side gets injured. Alexeyev, down the stretch and into the Stanley Cup playoffs last season, he played phenomenally. He was so good. And he certainly looks like he's ready to step into NHL duty here, whenever he gets the chance. The only reason that he won't be in the starting 6 on opening night is because he has the misfortune of being left-handed. And the Caps' left side on defense is just so stupid strong now with the addition of Jacob Chychrun to go with, Martin Ferravari and Rasmus Sandin. But this is the NHL, injuries always happen at some point, and so Alexeyev will get his chance eventually, and I am certain that he is going to play great once again when he does. And listen, I, for one, am beyond stoked that Dylan McElrath has made the opening night roster. Just like Alex Alexeyev, Dylan McElrath was such a bright spot in the Stanley Cup playoffs last season after getting called up from Hershey and just playing really great for us after the Caps had all of those injuries. He was such a bright spot, and I think he truly surprised a lot of people with how far his game has come along, how far his game has matured in Hershey as a member of the Bears. Like, he's not just the scariest player on the ice from a physical standpoint anymore. I mean, don't get me wrong, like, he is definitely still that, but he's also now rounded out his game to be very reliable defensively as well. And as Ovi and Wilson and everyone else has said, Big Mac, as Ovi calls him, this is a guy who everyone would want on their team, both on the ice and in the locker room. So I am beyond thrilled for Hershey's captain. He has really put in the time and the work, and he has really, really earned this. And now, finally, a quick look at the goaltending position for the Washington Capitals, where they obviously still have Charlie Lindgren, who was phenomenal for them last season. But they have also, as I mentioned, added Logan Thompson to their crease as well. And I think he has big potential to also be a very good goaltender for this team. I could easily see this playing out as a 1A, 1B scenario for the Caps, which I don't think anybody would be complaining about, because that would mean that both guys are playing very well enough that they're both earning starting time, right? But coming into this season, like, I am definitely feeling pretty darn comfortable with the Caps depth chart in net. They managed to sneak Hunter Shepard through waivers and back to Hershey following NHL training camp, so that is obviously huge. And then goalie of the future, Clay Stevenson. He, of course, is still young enough that he doesn't require waivers, thank goodness. And so he is back to Hershey now as well, after getting a look and playing extremely well, by the way, during Capitals training camp. So the most important position on the ice is well taken care of, in my opinion, in Washington and in Hershey, and that should make everyone happy. Overall, I think that this is going to be a very good team. I like what they did in the offseason a lot. I think that they are, very obviously improved in all areas of the ice: forward, defense, goaltending. And this is a team that made the Stanley Cup playoffs last season really just out of sheer determination, right? As well as, clutch performances down the stretch drive from a number of guys, namely Alex Ovechkin, Dylan Strome, John Carlson, and obviously Charlie Lindgren, Hendrix Lapierre as well. He was huge for them after they called him up from Hershey for the big club's playoff push. So, but the point is, that this is an indisputably stronger team now than the one that made the Stanley Cup playoffs last season. So I don't understand, I'm reading all of these, predictions from other, other analysts and websites and things. And the overwhelming prediction from these people is that the Caps are nowhere close to a playoff team. I don't get it. They made the Stanley Cup playoffs last season. They're a much better team right now than they were on the last day of the regular season last season, and that team made the Stanley Cup playoffs. So I don't get it. Show me another team around the National Hockey League that added 2 top 6 forwards, 2 top 4 defensemen, a goaltender who's, a starting quality goaltender. I just don't get it. I don't get what people aren't seeing with this team. I think that they're going to be a very good team this season. I think that they're going to surprise a lot of people once again. Everybody thought that we were going to be in the basement of the league last season as well. We made the playoffs. So as Capitals fans, don't put a lot of stock into, the mainstream media, what they think of your Washington Capitals. I don't listen to this stuff really. I read it, I laugh at it, and I move on, right? We here as fans of this team, we know what the score is. We know what's going on here. We know that this team has a chance at least to be quite good this season. So they are better in all areas, like I said, offense, defense, goaltending. They're stronger everywhere. So there are a ton of reasons for Caps fans to be feeling very positive, very optimistic heading into this upcoming season. And so on that note, I will climb down off of my soapbox here. But why don't we run through our predictions for this season's Metropolitan Division as a whole, and see where we think the Caps might end up. You guys, by the way, you can please feel free to share your own predictions in the comments section, as I always love reading those. You guys always come up with some really good stuff, and I love hearing what everyone, all of my fellow Caps fans, I love hearing what all of you think. So please drop those in the comments section as well. But for me, here's my prediction of the Metropolitan Division standings this season. I'm just going to kind of rapid fire list off the order that I have the teams finishing in first, and then I will explain my thought process and how I arrived to those conclusions afterwards, okay? So my prediction is I have got the New Jersey Devils finishing in first, winning the Metropolitan Division this season. And then I have got the New York Rangers second, our very own Washington Capitals, yeah, baby, in third place. And I have got the Carolina Hurricanes finishing in fourth, the New York Islanders in fifth, the lowly Pittsburgh Penguins in sixth. Sidney Crosby asks for a trade by Christmas. No, just kidding. And I have got the Philadelphia Flyers in seventh and the Columbus Blue Jackets in eighth. So let me explain my rationale for some of these, because I recognize that my list might sound a little bit different to you than some of the other lists that you've been hearing, like I said, from some of the other pundits around the league. Not that I proclaim to be a pundit myself, but you know what I'm saying. So the New Jersey Devils, right? Let's start with this. I think that their biggest problem last season, and it wasn't even particularly close, frankly, was their goaltending, right? They simply could not get a save when they needed one. And you do need some saves throughout the course of an NHL hockey game, throughout the course of an NHL season, and they couldn't get any. So I think that they addressed that in a big way, not only with getting Jacob Markstrom as their new starter, but also with Jake Allen as their new backup. Jake Allen has proven himself to be a very reliable number two guy at the NHL level as well. So I think that they have really shored up that position, the most important position on the ice, like I said, added a bona fide starter and added some insurance in Jake Allen as well, just in case anything happens to Markstrom. They add Brett Pesce on the back end, former Cap Brendan Dillon as well. And let's not forget that they are also adding a healthy Dougie Hamilton to their blue line this season as well, which was a huge problem for them last season, the fact that he was injured. And so their blue line, for all intents and purposes, essentially adds three huge pieces. And like I said, that blue line is now going to be playing in front of Jacob Markstrom and Jake Allen. So that is just a massive, massive improvement, at least on paper. And paper is all we have to go on at the moment, as the season hasn't really gotten underway yet in any meaningful sort of way. So we'll see what it looks like in April, but for right now, New Jersey's looking pretty good to me. And then the New York Rangers, like I said, I do have them finishing second in the division, and that is because I do think that they're going to take a bit of a step back. Nothing too dramatic yet, but I don't think that they're going to be winning the President's Trophy again this season. I'll put it that way. I do think they still have, one of the very best goaltenders in the entire world, even if he is about to cost them $12.5 million per season. But I do think that the Rangers are going to start showing their age a bit at some point. It might not be right out of the gate this season, but I just don't buy that they're going to be able to keep it up for an entire 82-game regular season, not 2 years in a row anyway, with the age of that roster. So they finish in second, if you're asking me. And then our very own Washington Capitals, like I said, coming in at third place. We've already talked about them and, all of the improvements that they've made. And you can see exactly where the story is heading already, right? Ryan Leonard joins the team right before the playoffs. Stanley Cup back to DC, baby. Plan the parade. I wonder who OV is handing it off to first this time around. And then the Carolina Hurricanes, I know a lot of people are going to think I'm crazy for putting them in fourth. I just think that they had a number of really key departures, specifically on the back end, over this offseason. Brett Pesce is a huge, huge loss for them, as is Brady Shea. And then they lose Teuvo Teravainen and Jake Gensel up front. Teuvo Teravainen, who's been a productive player for them for a long time now. And man, oh man, did Canes management ever bungle that Jake Gensel contract extension negotiation. They completely completely screwed the pooch on that one, folks. And Gensel finally said, you know what, screw this. Like, I'm out of here. I'm jetting off to sunny Florida to go chase Stanley Cups with Kucherov and Hedman and Vasilevsky and Braden Point and the boys. Like, you know, you can do a lot worse than that. So Gensel, basically, he's like, see you losers later. I'm out of here. So it was kind of a summer to forget for the Carolina Hurricanes in a lot of ways. And this came after another too early playoff exit for them. So it's not exactly an ideal situation in Carolina right now. And I do think that they take a step back because of it. I really, really do. And then I've got the New York Islanders in 5th. Like I said, there's not much to say there, really. Like, they're going to bore you to death. And that's probably not going to be enough to make the playoffs in the East this season with a Metropolitan Division that should be much improved over last season. Pittsburgh Penguins in 6th place. What can you say? They suck now. They're going to suck into the future. And I am certainly not going to shed any tears about it. In fact, I'm taking a sick amount of pleasure in their demise, actually, quite frankly. Kyle Dubas's plan is that he has no plan. So seriously, like, there's really nothing to say on the matter. We will talk about it if they ever get a plan, right? Philadelphia Flyers in 7th place. Columbus Blue Jackets in 8th place. Again, you know, not really worth discussing at this point. Although, you know, Michkov coming over, that's kind of exciting, I guess. If you're a Flyers fan, we'll see how he does in his first NHL season. You always wonder about those super skilled players, but like they're really undersized. Like Michkov is a really, really small guy. So always curious to see how they do in the National Hockey League when they make that transition. We'll see if it happens right away for him or if he kind of gets off to a slow start. But anyways, yeah, Philadelphia Flyers in 7th place, Columbus Blue Jackets in 8th place. Again, like I said, not really worth, you know, discussing on like a deep dive level for the time being anyway. And so that's just because we're short on time, by the way. But there you have it. Anyways, that is your 2024-2025 season preview by me, Jenaya Talks Caps. Let me know what you think of my predictions for the Metropolitan Division. Do you think I'm onto something here, or do you think I am unhinged? Again, you know, let me know in the comments section. I always love hearing from you guys. Always love reading your comments. You guys really make me laugh sometimes. Like, some of the things that you guys say are flat out hilarious. So I love reading those. I love hearing from you guys. Drop some comments for me. And that'll be it for today, babes. Like, we will have a lot more to talk about once the Caps have finally played a game or two here. But until then, it's all just speculation and hypotheticals, rather. Anyway, right? Like, and I for one am more than ready for the season to get going for real here. You know, we've got a revamped lineup, like we've talked about all off season. We've got Alex Ovechkin, 41 goals away from Wayne Gretzky, the great one. Let's drop the puck, babes. Let's get this thing going. And until then, please do not forget to subscribe to our show if you haven't already done so. You can find us available across all of your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, you name it. We are everywhere. So subscribe, share us with your fellow Caps fans, your fellow hockey fans, your family, your friends, any Pittsburgh Penguins fans, you know, if you want to piss them off. We appreciate you all so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, babes. And as always, let's go Caps.